Welcome everyone to this session. So we're going to walk through today how to master remote production. And joining me today is my colleague, Dan Coffey. I'm based currently in Bend, Oregon on the West Coast. And then Dan, you're in Boston, Massachusetts, I believe.
Over on the other side of the country. Yeah.
Wonderful. So Dan and I did this session at NAB in person live, and we decided, okay, let's go ahead and do a remote version of this. So that people who weren't able to attend, we could record this and make it available. So we're going to start with a very high level. This is a lot of information in this workflow diagram, but it's a really good place to start. Really, the basics here is what are we trying to do in remote post-production and live remote production and live streaming and live event workflows? It's all pretty much the same workflow. We need to capture raw video and audio content. There's a variety of ways we can do that, whether it's through a graphics capture card, an actual ENG camera, or a broadcast quality camera. And then you can't just send that raw video and audio directly to the cloud or to a web browser. You have to encode it. So there's a variety of different ways that we encode. The web and mobile browser encode is that technology I just mentioned, which is WebRTC. Essentially what it is, it's using the web browser as your software encoder to encode that raw video and audio. This could be a webcam, but it can also be a professional broadcast quality camera if done in the right way. And then not just using the web browser, but all the standard ways that we do this through camera top encoders, really expensive, TV head-end encoders like AWS Elemental or a TAM or things like that. And then we have all of our native client-side broadcaster SDKs. So if you want to build a native app for iOS or for Android or for native Mac, you can build all that on top of our SDKs as well. So we work a lot with a lot of partners. One of the most popular encoders, and we'll be using this for our demos today, is OBS Studio, which is the world's most popular encoder because it's free and open source. We forked the OBS Studio project and we added WebRTC into that, so we can even do these faster encoding workflows using WebRTC as the base technology. And then you see here, we actually have the plugin for Avid, which is using the SRT protocol. And we'll chat a little bit about SRT and how it differentiates and when you should use one over the other. And then once you encode that, you can send that into, this is pretty much our Millicast product, is this WebRTC CDN that allows you to scale this encoded video and audio to audiences around the world or remote producers all around the world. And then we have the playback side, and this can be playback in the web browser, in the mobile browser, natively in the mobile app, on an Apple TV, on an Android TV, pretty much anywhere. And we'll talk about these workflows and show these demos in this. And like Dan mentioned previously, feel free to submit any questions that you have. We're going to try to make this as interactive as possible and answer questions on the fly as we go through this. Anything you want to add here, Dan?
No, just like I feel like WebRTC gets a bad rap, right? Like everybody's used to WebRTC. They think of video conferencing, they think of Google Meet and kind of that behavior that we're all used to when things kind of glitch out. And I think what we're taking is that kind of broadcast first approach to WebRTC. And that's by using standards like RTMP or SRT as protocols to ingest into our service. And the key here, Ryan kind of glossed over this, but we take those and we turn it into WebRTC because WebRTC is really good at one thing in particular, and that's speed. So you get the world's fastest streaming with WebRTC. There's no other protocol that can compete with that. And when we think about what is really important for live production, it is making decisions quickly, and you need to see things happen sub-second, right? So when we talk about real-time video, we define that as less than a second. And for us at Dolby.io, that means like we deliver video at less than half a second around the globe, no matter where you are.
And that's glass to glass is pretty much what we're chatting about here. When we talk about from capture to playback, this is from the minute it hits the lens on a camera to the minute it plays back on a device, right? So glass to glass. And what's important here as well is we chat about Zoom and Teams and all these different video conferencing tools, and they're fantastic for that purpose, which is conferencing. They're not great at honoring the media pipeline. So everything that we try to build at Adobe, we're trying to make this not very salesy. Both Dan and I are on product, so we can try to make this more product and engineering focused and workflow focused. Both him and I come from the broadcast industry and from live streaming, so we know the space decently well. All right, well, let's go through. So let's chat first about, we're going to chat about two major things today. One is REMI, or live remote production. The other is remote post-production. We're going to start with REMI because REMI is the ability to work collaboratively on the production of a live broadcast event with people who maybe aren't in the same physical location. So traditionally with REMI, you have someone like ESPN, they have people on premises like a basketball game who are the camera operators. You've got someone running the OB truck, but then you've got those streams backhauling back to a cloud production facility or a production facility. They produce, add graphics, add commentary, all that, and then of course stream that out to satellite broadcast, live streaming, and all that. What's happening is with REMI Production, a lot of those collaborative pieces are all different parts of the country or different parts of the world. So there's these mixes, and how can everyone get a live feed in real time so they can all be making real time decisions? That's really a lot of the products that we've built and a lot of people are building around live REMI production. And here's just a few of the logos of companies that use our technology. So the NFL uses us for the production of the Super Bowl. Think of the 100+ cameras they're using all across the stadium and everywhere. Not everyone can be in the studio looking at a multi-viewer, right? And even the multi-viewer is physically restricted to show those 100 cameras. So NFL uses us to create a web browser version of that multi-viewer, and we'll be showing exactly how to set that up in this demo.
Yeah, and Ryan, you mentioned like COVID as being a driver for this. I think we're all aware of this, but like this happened even at the NFL, right? All these people who used to come in and produce the Super Bowl in person, in the control room, in all of the offices around all the supporting functions for this broadcast. When COVID happened, they had to do this remotely and they had to figure it out just like everybody else. And so they turned to us for a solution. And even after the pandemic has wrapped here and people are back in person, like nobody wants it all to go back to fully in person. So even the Super Bowl is using us to, to produce the show remotely. So I think that's the best of both worlds. It's kind of like the hybrid approach to returning to in-office work for those of us who work in offices. Like it's really nice to be able to do production in the same way.
Exactly. And this is just a quick example of what this would look like for a live event. So let me get rid of this. So here is a live event. We've got all kinds of cameras involved in this. We have a drone here as an example. We've been doing some live horse racing with a customer of ours and taking in a live drone feed directly into the cloud. So all of that needs to be encoded, sent into the cloud. And then here we have a remote team that's able to pull this multi-viewer up, and they can get a clean feed of this multi-view. We'll be showing the differences between a destructive multi-view feed and a clean feed that allows someone to get a clean ISO feed from the broadcast facility. And we'll talk about those different workflows as well. And this is the first demo we're going to show. So we have this live REMI multi-viewer that we've built in the web browser. And I'm going to go ahead and paste this inside of the chat window. And I see here, hopefully you guys can see that URL. Well, that's to host and panelists. Maybe we can figure out how to share it. But I'll go ahead and show what this looks like. So here I am in Google Chrome running on my Mac. And here are this multi-viewer feeds coming from a live event. Now, this particular footage is pre-recorded, but imagine this is a live particular event. We have this simulated as live SRT feeds feeding into our product. And here I have the ability to switch in between these different camera feeds in real time. So if I'm a remote producer and I'm working on this live event, I can actually pull up these different feeds and choose which I want my main feed to be. I can also change the layout of this to do a traditional 4-up display. If I had more sources, I could sort this in here. And at any point, I can click on any one of these sources and it gets a clean feed of this full screen on my playback monitor. So now if I want to get the program feed coming in, so this is one of the cameras, but I actually want to switch between a different feed. Here is the kind of program feed, right, that's coming out. So this ability to pull in multiple video and audio sources from your broadcast facility allows remote viewers to use the browser as a collaborative way to look at this live content being sent. And then from Dan, I know you've been working a lot on different live events for this as well. So I think you've got some stuff to add as it relates to the use case for this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about like the part I want to be clear on is this is not necessarily, it can be used for this, but it's not necessarily what you're distributing to your end broadcast, right? This is the enablement layer on top of the broadcast. And so when Ryan is clicking here in the browser, and I'm not sure if we can get some help getting the link. If you go to dolby.io and click on the products page and make your way to real-time streaming, this example is embedded in the main page. But this is the enablement layer on top of the actual broadcast. So when Ryan clicks on a tile, it's only impacting it for himself. It's not impacting it for everybody else. You're not cutting the show with this like a traditional video mixer. This is just the ability to actually, if you're the A2 and you need to see who's got their mic pack on when the camera's not online, like you now can pull it up full screen and you don't need to worry about impacting everybody else or trying to look at the single multi-view coming out of the switcher that you're trying to look closely at, like a little tiny tile on the square. So requires a little bit of setup, right? You have to send us all the individual feeds, but we can marry them together in this kind of multi-view format.
Yeah, and I pulled up these media statistics just to show you guys kind of what the round trip time and the delta in between capture and playback. So, here is some additional stats on this, but this multi-viewer is something that you can use not just in the browser, but we've actually created a stream monitor for this as well, which is a native app for Apple TV or iOS, or even for Android TV and Android devices that enables you to get that same feed.
Yep. And we have a question from Michelle I saw pop into the chat. And the question is, can we use it to put graphics on? Can we do titles and chyrons? And the answer is yes. Like there's actually, we'll get to this later in we'll talk about a partner we're working with, Singular.live, that does in-browser graphics, which is pushing that graphic workflow to the end client instead of burning it into the broadcast. What we have in each tile here is a different feed. So if you send us a feed that has graphics burned into it, like via SRT or RTMP or WebRTC, it appears on the actual tile. If you want to put a tile over, or if you want to put a graphic like a lower third over the entire multi-view player, like that's also completely possible. You can use a third-party product like Singular.live. And if you have any developer skills, like we are actually focused at being a developer platform. So what we have here is a sample player. You can take this, you can take our SDKs and you can build your own experience, but a lot of broadcast folks don't want to hear that, right? They want to just plug their thing in and have it work, and we get that. And that's why we host this multi-viewer. So there's a range of options. And again, we're happy to chat about specific workflows, but the short take is yes, you can either embed it or you can burn it into your feed that will come through as well. Or if you're taking just like a bug feed or some other graphic overlay, you could send that just as a single video as well.
Yeah, and we'll show some demos here in a bit of both doing it at the broadcast level with the encoder with OBS as a quick example, and also doing it client side where you have more interactive graphics. So we'll chat about both those workflows. So let's kind of unpack the multi-viewer now and show how we get this up and running. So I'm going to pass this over to Dan, and Dan's going to walk us through how to set up a very simple demo from a encoder directly into Millicast.
Yep. All right. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to optimize for video, and I'm not going to share sound so that if the music starts playing, it doesn't blow everybody's speakers up. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep, that looks good.
Move this over. Great. So here's our non-sales sales pitch that you create an account at Dolby.io and you log in, and this is kind of the experience that you see. So this is go back to the main page. You come in here, you click on the streaming tab, and you'll have just one token the first time you start. But a token is the way that we define a channel or a broadcast. So I'm going to create a new one just for this event. And let's call this FMC. And we'll name the stream FMC. So this is kind of our channel and then the actual stream within the channel. You can have multiple streams. And so now that I'm here, let's do a demo of just like how fast is this technology. And I'm going to take one quick second to myself, see if I can pull up the Zoom feed. All right, well, I've lost you guys. So let me know if I need to slow down or speed up or anything else. So here we are. We've got the kind of token details as you'd expect, right? All the things you need to know about our service. I'll note that we have a free tier. So non-sales is go ahead and use the free tier for free as long as you want. It's great. Sometimes you can do all of your remote production with it. If you need to upgrade to a paid plan, we also welcome that, but it's great to kick the tires without any help. So if I come into my publishing tab, we have all of the details that you would expect when trying to ingest a feed. So how do you send a feed to Dolby.io? If you're using RTMP, here are the parameters. If you're using SRT, here are the other parameters. I'm going to turn that on and let's do a quick demo. So if I hit broadcast, it's going to open up this is the browser broadcaster, not a requirement, but it's helpful to demonstrate what we're looking at together. So if I turn on my correct webcam, we should see me pop up. There I am. So this is me in real time. If I hit start, this is going to start streaming into our service. And then I'm going to go over here to get the playback link. If I launch this, here we go. And this is what our core value proposition is speed. So here we go. that's around the country, right? I'm actually streaming from Boston, where I am, to Phoenix, Arizona, where our data center is, and back, and you can see just how fast this is. And so this is what we can do. This is native WebRTC end to end, but even with RTMP or SRT, we're still talking sub-second or sub-half second, which is still fast enough for many different areas of production. And maybe you say, listen, I need real fast speed for the actual TD, the person doing the live switch, but for the guy who's commenting on the game or for the graphics person, like this is the kind of enablement we can power by offering this kind of speed. So that's the quick get started demo. And then actually let's do, Ryan, you talked about a multi-view demo. Let's do multi-view real quick. So I'm going to start my stream back up. I pop back in live. And if I open a new broadcast, and I'm going to just use our test video for this one so we can see the difference. Get rid of our notification. And then the one thing I'm going to add here is we have this thing called multi-source. So I'm going to call this playback and hit update. And if I start streaming that, and again, this is all, you can do this all with RTMP, SRT, or the browser. And I put the player now into multi-view. There we go. We've got the multi-viewer right here. So just the same experience we just did with the simulated live content. Here it is live. Easy to get set up and running, just moments.
And the great thing about this too is like, Dan's doing this with WebRTC as encoder right now, but you can do mix and match this with both people's webcam sources as well as with the actual program feeds coming in from a broadcast encoder like an RTMP or SRT feed. So complete flexibility depending on what workflow you want to build.
Exactly. So you may be saying, great, but it's using the browser. That doesn't work for me. It's not, it doesn't fit into my workflow. And that's where we have a couple of options that exist. So OBS, you may recognize as one of the most popular, the most popular broadcasting software-based encoder in the world, right? Because you can do compositions, you can make changes dynamically, you could actually cut your entire show out of here. So we forked OBS, the OBS project, and we added WebRTC to it. So we call this OBS WebRTC. It's a version that we maintain. We do roughly monthly releases to stay up to date with the head version of OBS. And again, what we add specially here, whoops, not that one. Yeah, no, it is that one. If I go to settings and go to stream, you'll see we've got Millicast WebRTC here, and that's the WebRTC piece. So as I come in here to my publishing tab, I've got my token details and my stream name. I simply take them and plug those details in here. So now I've got that going. And then if I hit start on this and I open up, let me open the right link here. We do a little live demo juggling. So in the same speed that we were just looking at the multi-viewer example, here we go. You notice I've got the NDI logo up. This is coming from the NDI tool. So a very popular kind of local network protocol is NDI. But if anybody's ever used NDI to do remote production, right? It's incredibly difficult. You have to use some kind of third-party service. You got to figure out how to hook up NDI Bridge, which has its own restrictions and problems. And the feedback that we got loud and clear was NDI does not work in the cloud, right? It works great on-prem in my network, but if I want to send feeds out, NDI is still a challenge today. And so we solved that problem by adding NDI to this version of OBS. And so what I have running here is just the NDI test patterns. So if I come in here and I change the source, you can see it switch, and I'm getting that really fast sub-second switching. But I can also flip to the other common way that customers who are doing remote production use us, and that's with a multi-view coming out of the switcher. So this is, we talked about the non-destructive multi-view where I'm sending, the individual feeds up to our service where we logically group them into the multi-viewer where you can click and you can interact, and it's non-destructive, right? I've got my own experience. But for those of us who are doing a production where that's not an option, I don't have enough encoders to send all the streams or whatever it may be, a very common use case is to either build the multi-view with several NDI sources inside of OBS, or just take the switcher feed out and plug it in. And now, boom, I've got the multi-view going out in high quality and multiple bit rates to anybody using a web browser. So instead of having to use specialized software, I can simply take this link. I'll even paste it into our chat here today.
Yeah, I think in the chat, Megan, I think we don't have access to share this with the attendees, just with host and panelists. I don't know if you can change that on the fly. But we do have a question here from Jesse. So Jesse is asking, does this technology play well with vMix? And absolutely. So OBS is obviously free and it's open source and very popular. But vMix is probably, of the paid software encoders, is probably, and mixers, it's probably the most popular software encoder. Both vMix and Wirecast are very, very popular. vMix does not have native WebRTC built into it, but you can still use RTMP or SRT as an encoded stream to send into our service.
And then, of course, if you're using a live view, if you're using any other hardware encoder, we support all of them with RTMP or SRT.
Yeah, and a real key here, we often get the question is like, how does our service differentiate from using NDI or SMPTE 2110 or like, but both those protocols, NDI and SMPTE 2110, are great for what they're used for, which is creating a virtual source inside of a network. Neither of them are actually built to enable remote collaboration or remote sharing across the public internet. So this is kind of where our service comes in. It allows you to get that NDI feed from vMix or from OBS or from any other source and make it available across the public internet in a web browser, right, for people to view remotely. So that's really the biggest differentiation between the products. And the other thing that we can do while we're in OBS here, Dan, is maybe answer the question that we had previously about adding graphics. So yeah, we actually just launched this partnership with Singular.live. And you can do graphics in one of two ways. So one way that we have here, and Dan, I'll have you kind of walk through this. We can do it on the OBS, on the production side first, and then we can show a client-side version of this in the web viewer.
So if you're not familiar with Singular.live, let's just pull up their website. Again, we get no kickback from them. This is just people making great technology that pairs well together. We want to show the workflow. So we think this is kind of the future of where graphics are going. So what they do at Singular.live is they make graphics easy, browser-driven, interactive, and personalizable. And so you can either use them one of two ways. One is to put it into the broadcast, kind of like we have demonstrated here. So what I've got in OBS, we're doing the sports game. This is their control center. So I've logged in, and what's really fun to watch is just see this happen, right? So I've got a match happening, and if I hit, okay, someone just scored, I hit plus, you can see it change on here as for the controller, but it also changes here for the graphics layout. So super simple to implement. All it is a web page. So if I go to the properties, you can see I've pre-populated the actual text string here that I was given by Singular.live, and now boom, I've got graphics. I can turn them off, right? It's really clean, it's really fast. And so this is where we're taking that, we're overlaying it in OBS in our video, but you can do this many other ways, many other encoders. And then I can stream that where it's burned in for everybody. But the more modern take on graphics is to do it at the end client, right? So when you open the browser and hit play on your video, to have it happen there. So let's take a look at what that looks like and talk about what that can enable. So if I pull up my music demo, you guys are all getting familiar with the Free Nationals. Free Nationals is that demo we kind of have running on the website here. So Free Nationals playing, doing a little demo for Dolby. And so let's say you're doing an intro and you want to put up the bio for everybody. I hit up here and then boom. So this is really cool. What happened is this is just an instance of our web player. And this has the integration with Singular.live incorporated. So it's, again, one line of code, you drop it in, and then you use their control center to change anything. So I can change the colors, I can turn it on and off. So really simple demo, but what the power is that this loaded in my browser at the edge, right? So as the end client, it loaded, and think about the possibilities of this. You can do personalized messages, right? So if I in my system know what my name is, I could put Dan in here. If you want to think about this as the future of advertisement, right, or in-app shopping as you're trying to do broadcasts, like this is a really powerful technology that's going to enable all kinds of different workflows. It's not necessarily a replacement for a Chiron system or any other live graphics system, but certainly an interesting take on it, and a same thing, browser support, easy to control, a really fresh take on graphics.
Yeah, I think that the really interesting thing here, and I'll actually share this URL so you guys can see this in your own browser if you want to pull up those graphics again, Dan, is there's two major differences here. One is the fact that the way the graphics are being done is not in a production facility. So you don't need to have someone running something in person. It can be done remotely through a web browser, which is quite interesting. Everything is done in vector graphics and rendered over the player. The part that I find the most compelling here is not just that revolution in the way you're producing the graphics, it's the fact that these graphics add an interactivity element that can be customized to every viewer. So you can do local language realization or localization, I should say. So not everyone's getting a burned in graphic coming from your production facility that everyone gets the same language, as an example. Is you can also add the interactivity side to this, where you can add trivia, you can add polls, you can, if you build a betting app, you can add a betting component inside of this that's client side inside the player. So there's a lot more revolutionary workflows here for the way graphics are done. And Singular.live, one of their competitors, just got acquired by VizRT, which is the company that bought NewTek. So a lot of companies are now investing in these cloud-based graphics packages as a way to enable these different workflows.
Yeah, I see we got a question from Roland. Is the entire graphics animation done in real time? Which aspect has to be pre-rendered? So the way that Singular works is they have a whole composition engine, right? We're showing Uno, which is kind of a single purpose, like turn it on, turn it off, increase the score. But they have, there's another demo where you can do anything. You can do lower thirds, you can take feeds from Twitter, you can add the personalization. There's a whole bunch that you can do. So which applications do they use to create these graphics? These are stock graphics from Singular, but if you don't have a designer, they have a bunch of pre-built templates. So this is just one of their pre-built templates. I simply dropped the image in and changed the text. But you can also, they have a whole design center. So you can take a graphics package that you might get that comes in a vector format or whatever, and then you can export them and do your own building, right? You can build an entire composition in their product, and it does things like this, right? So you can literally down to the pixel level have any kind of customization and control. So
yeah, so Roland, to your question as well about what application is used to create these graphics, everything is done in the browser. So what you see on the right here with this app.singularlive that has the black background, it's all done with SVG, scalable vector graphics, inside of a web page. So it's a clean, chromeless web page, and that gets rendered on top of our player. So Dan did the integration with this player SDK that we have on the left here, and built the Singular.live package into it. But all the graphics are all done by the Singular.live product, right? I see a question here about Adobe After Effects. I mean, with After Effects is you're obviously doing motion graphics that are much higher quality than what you can do in Singular.live because you're restricted by the ability of the browser. We'd have to see we'd have to see if the like what kind of integration you have with pre-rendering Adobe After Effects into like an actual video and then overlaying the video. That can be done as well potentially, but After Effects is a much more robust package. The other way to do that is getting an NDI feed off of After Effects and embedding that in. But that's a little more complex.
This is where Ryan and I are getting out of our depth, right? To be honest with you, we can show you what the interaction looks like, but it's worth a chat with Singular. They're really friendly. I'm sure that they get this question all the time, so I think it's worth taking a look and chatting with them. You could probably build something like a frame-by-frame animation, or you could probably queue a video that plays back. I know you can load media into their templates, but again, the power comes from the actual SVG browser-based rendering. I think that's really the powerful element. So yeah, so I see the question, you can pre-render the graphics and embed them in real time. I think yes is probably the answer.
Yep. So real quick, just so we move on, we can definitely touch more on this after the fact and answer your questions on this. But I'm going to share my screen and show a few other kind of products that we offer around real-time stream monitoring. So we've been focusing more on live REMI workflows right now. One of the products that we built is this iOS and tvOS app that you can download for free, and it allows you to pull in a clean feed of a single stream coming from our platform. So specifically, we had this request from customers that, hey, we want to build a real-time confidence monitor or a talent monitor for, let's say there's a journalist who's out in the field and they want to get a live program feed. You guys have probably seen this even on CNN and MSNBC and these different, huge news organizations. They turn to a live journalist in the field, and the journalist isn't ready, right? They're they have their AirPods in and they're on a call from the studio, but they're not seeing the live program feed. What we built this for is you can download our iOS app, and the journalist in the field could have their iOS or their iPhone and be able to see the program feed in the studio while it's happening in real time, so that she knows contextually when they go to her live, she knows what's been happening in the studio. So that's good for a talent monitor. It's good for remote interviews as well, things like that. That's a very popular use case. So this stream monitor we built is specifically for this kind of a use case. And then I want to show
and if it's not clear, you can go to the Apple App Store and download it right now. You can do it on your Mac. There's an iPad and Apple TV version, and same from Android and Google Play Store.
And I wanted to show this one example. This is one of our customers, CBS, that built, when you CBS Studios obviously have these enormous studios down in Hollywood. And, in this example, this is a show, I think this is like Roseanne or something. This is probably sharing pretty poorly through Zoom, so you can't really see it. But when you rent the stage, let's say you're Nike and you're shooting a commercial, the new Air Jordan's coming out, right? And you're spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on the production of this commercial. How can people remotely be there to, a Nike executive wants to see how, the shoot is going. You can be pulling these live cameras from stage 22. And in this instance, it's a 4-up display of the 4 broadcast cameras inside the CBS studios. CBS built a product around this where you can switch in between these different cameras. And this is a value add that they monetize, right? So not only can you rent the studio and shoot the commercial, you can also have this live remote multi-viewer available for people who are remote. For the production of, a really good example that I love using is, you guys probably all saw the Game of Thrones Starbucks cup, right? Where after it went live, nobody picked up the fact that there was a Starbucks cup. Think about if they even pick that up in post-production, having to go back and shoot everything live again. We're talking about a huge expense, right? So not all of that can be fixed in post sometimes. There was another example when I was in Europe and talking to a customer, I think it was Amazon Studios, and they realized halfway through shooting in a day, someone remotely picked up the fact that they had a prosthetic, like a green glove, and they were going to remove that and in a sword fight or something, someone had lost their hand. The actual actor had it on the wrong hand, according to the script. So they were able to pick that up remotely and be able to give the feedback to the on-site production to reshoot all the things that needed to be reshot. So this idea of live dailies, it's not dailies anymore. It's not at the end of the day that you review things. Things are being reviewed in real time, and they're, I don't know what the term is, liveys, but it's the idea of a virtual video village, or nowies. Yeah, it's the idea of a virtual video village, right? That is not an on-set video village, but an offset video village, where you can review all this live content being shot in real time, whether it's around TV, film, commercials, or so on. All right, so we chatted a little bit about live REMI production. We wanted to focus a little bit on remote post-production. And it'd be interesting to note how many of you are working with scripted content. So this is, editing tools like Adobe Premiere, Avid, and so on. So this exact same workflow that we've showed for live remote production and REMI production can also be leveraged for remote post-production. And this is kind of the nexus of what Millicast came from, right? In working with Evercast and other people in the industry. And the idea here is we can take a live feed. We're all working on Dune 2, and we're editing, and we want to review the music, the audio editing, the video editing, choosing different compositing and shots, doing remote color grading, where we're working with different color graders around the world on the production of this film or TV show. How can we all work in real time remotely at home? And these workflows using Adobe Premiere, Avid, and NDI is a great way to do this. So we're going to show how to do this. One of the customers, we have a ton of customers in this space, but HBO's Max has used us for some of their originals. And they won an Emmy for the Hacks show. And you see here, the executive producer mentioned the fact that during COVID, they were producing this show and couldn't have done it without using Millicast in this workflow. All right, so let's show a quick demo of this, Dan. I'll turn it back over to you,
Yep.
and we can work through an Adobe Premiere workflow and then show this in Avid as well.
Yeah, and so seeing is believing, right? So let's actually pull this up. So I've got Adobe Premiere loaded here. Let's say I've got my super complex timeline that I've built, not just this one clip, but as I hit play, what you can see is that on the right, this is our OBS. So what I have in OBS here is I've added an NDI source for Premiere. And to do this, all you have to do is install the NDI tools on your Mac. I'm going to open up the preferences in Premiere, and I believe it's under playback. Yep. And so you just check NDI output. So once you check NDI output, your Premiere is now an NDI source on your local network.
And you don't
But
even
again,
need
how
to
do
install NDI tools anymore. It just comes actually
oh, it
pre-baked
comes built
with
in?
Adobe Premiere,
Perfect.
as an NDI output, I believe.
Yep. So now I can just add another device here, an NDI source onto my Premiere, and then just like before, I hit start streaming, and now I can sit here. I can jump on a Zoom call with everybody. If you're interested, Dolby.io also has a communications API for building an entire suite around this. But people have the call part figured out. They're trying to figure out how to actually move the video in high quality, and so that's what we offer. Again, sub-second. So it's not like which shot were we talking about. It's like, hey, go back, 2 frames and review the frames together. This is
Yeah,
hugely popular for review and approval
can
process.
you share the playback URL for this so we can share it with the audience, and then they can look at this in their own web browser as well? Because this is a great example of seeing the quality that we put out compared to Zoom or compared to another another kind of video conferencing tool per se.
Yep, it's actually this. It should be the same link that was posted before. I'm just streaming to the same one. So I've got it up here. Let me put Premiere on this side and just hit play, and we'll see.
And you can also choose the NDI audio output too. I don't think you have it embedded in this example for the purpose of not trying to blow out people's speakers as we share this. But what's popular is people are using this also for Pro Tools. So we have in Pro Tools, you can pull in the Avid Media Composer, like edited. So we have a lot of people doing remote compositing music, composition. So you're working on original music composition for a TV show. You can review it in real time and get your timeline from Pro Tools and output that through NDI into the same workflow. So it can be done both for video editing as well as for audio editing. And then people are using this exact workflow with DaVinci Resolve for doing color grading as well. And there's obviously a ton of other color grading tools out there. It's a very, if you guys are in the post-production space, you realize color grading is one of the most important pieces of the post-production workflows.
Yeah. And like again, our tool for NDI, we make free OBS WebRTC just to make it easy, but there are plenty of other tools out there that you can use as well. Like Soft Vellum just did an integration with us. They maintain Nimble Streamer. They maintain what's the one for the phone?
Larix Broadcaster.
Larix Broadcaster. So those guys are great. So if you already have them in your workflow, you can use them to convert NDI to WebRTC and stream to us. Again, any other hardware, software encoder will work, but we maintain WebRTC, OBS WebRTC. There it is. To just try to make this easier. If you're in the Avid Media Composer family, right? I'm going to pull up a different project here. So this is Avid Media Composer. I think it was back in April, they added SRT to their software. So if I come in here, so it's this your main timeline, you've got this little widget here for managing your hardware and software. If you right click it and go to SRT and hit configure, there it is. You can drop your credentials in here. Right, and I want to know that read their documents on what these quality levels mean, because low is I think like 15 megabit, and high is like 100 megabit. So you need to make sure your connection can support it. But if you're just looking for content review, low is a good one to go with. And with my internet connection, I'm going to pick that. So if now I just hit start, it'll turn red and start blinking. And if I go to the same viewer URL, I'll just change this to Avid. I know that one because I named it. And so what we should see is if I hit play here, is my computer gonna crash on me?
And while Dan's getting that working, the big difference here is why are we using OBS in one example with Premiere and SRT here? Well, really, it's because you can't send NDI to the public cloud. You need to have an encoder, right, that does that. So with Avid, yeah, it's working now, Dan.
Great.
So with Avid, they've actually built in an encoder into Avid Media Composer, right? So I think the drawback there is I think Adobe Premiere is really the most used NLE in the world right now, right? There's not a
Yes.
ton of people from what we work with that use it. It would be great if Adobe actually adds an SRT encoder into Premiere, because then it would skip the need to be able to use OBS in parallel, right? But what we found with OBS, why it's so popular with our customers, it's free, first of all, and it's also a software product. So people who are in the remote post space, they're not developers. They don't want to go and have to build, code or program. They want to just run a piece of software. And so our version of OBS allows them to pull in NDI and do it with that workflow. Yeah, so Roland's giving us good feedback. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, everything we do in WebRTC is, I think this is what differentiates us from a lot of other people, is we've been very focused on broadcast and production and post-production. So everything that we try to do is retaining the highest level of quality through these pipelines and these workflows, while retaining speed. So even though we say sub-second is real time, truthfully, our glass-to-glass workflows are usually in the fractions of a second. We can go as fast as a tenth of a second or 100 milliseconds with some of these workflows as well. All right, well, let me share my screen. Let's kind of roll on. We wanted to show a few other things and talk a bit in the 15 minutes we have left about some of these future-facing workflows and features that might be interesting.
I'm gonna plant one seed while you pull it up, Ryan, because this is a trend we've noticed. So we talked to a lot of people in the production industry about these workflows and using the multi-viewer and all that, but what we're actually getting a lot of interest in is actually trying to engage your audience and stream in new ways. And so we've got a lot of customers who are now coming to us and using this multi-viewer to actually stream to their end viewer, just to add another level of interactivity and engagement to their audiences. So it certainly can and be used that way. And part of what our value proposition is scaling WebRTC. It's a hard protocol to scale because it is stateful. So you've got your end viewer connecting to the media server, and they actually talk to each other back and forth. That's how we maintain the speed and the quality and the constant quality switching to make sure that the experience is always real time and always high quality. And so we can scale to over 100,000 people on the viewer side, which is another thing that differentiates our product.
Yep.
Where are we located in the world? We're located in San Francisco, but our team is distributed.
Yeah, Dolby headquarters is in downtown San Francisco, but most of our team is actually remote, so we're all over the place.
Yeah.
Talking about the future, so one of the big things that we're working on is HDR workflows. So as we obviously focus on remote post-production specifically, you want to enable, as we talk about color grading, it's like Dolby's obviously known for quality in audio, but they have been focusing a lot on video over the last 5 to 10 years. One of those big focuses is Dolby Vision, which is obviously a 10-bit, enables 10-bit workflows for playback across devices. And if you guys have ever pulled up Netflix on an iPhone, you can see Dolby Vision in action with that HDR quality. The biggest drawback here is the fact that because we enable workflows, real-time workflows through the web browser, we're at the mercy of the web browser for supporting features. It's not as easy to do as you think to actually support 10-bit, 12-bit, HDR, 444 chroma subsampling, all these things that are necessary for enabling good HDR workflows. But we are working a lot in this space, and we hope to actually enable some of these workflows through the browser in the very near future, and have already done that for 10-bit VP9. But Dan, do you want to touch on this real quick and kind of what our roadmap is for this?
Yeah, I mean, a great point, Ryan. Like a lot of this comes down to what does WebRTC in the browser support? But what I can say is we are enabling this in our native clients. So we've spent a lot of time talking about the browser, but we do support many other platforms. We have sample apps, we have apps you can just download, like our Stream Monitor app, and that's where we're going to start enabling these workflows. So Dolby Vision being the kind of premier HDR experience. I'm curious if you're listening and you work in post-production or even production, like how much workflow are you seeing in HDR these days? Like, is this coming up? Is this something you're getting a lot of interest in? Like, I feel like from the product side, what we're seeing is especially like the top 1% of Hollywood has this all figured out, right? And that's where Dolby's main space is. But for everybody else, like everybody's still trying to figure out how to do HDR workflows. So one effort that we have is to make that whole part easier, right? Have things just work when you send signals in. And so that's what Ryan and I are working on towards the future here. And the screenshot just kind of shows like what is the difference as you increase your bit depth, as you increase your color fidelity, as you increase your color volume with HDR, what are the benefits? And again, pull up Netflix Netflix, watch it on a true HDR capable device. And I think all of us agree the impact is real, but the workflows to actually get there still pose a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of going on, and we want to highlight a couple of customers and what customers have done with our product. So one of these is Broadcast Management Group. BMG is a company based out of, they have a cloud center in Henderson, Nevada, right outside of Las Vegas. They've just built another one in the DC area. And they do a lot of the production for ESPN and a lot of tier one events. So if like the Little League World Series is one example that ESPN owns the rights to, and they will hire BMG to go and do the entire on-set camera production. But the biggest thing that BMG offers is they're a pioneer in REMI workflows. And what they're enabling is having a shoestring staff and budget on site to reduce the cost of having to send a multi-million-dollar OB truck. BMG has these REMI trucks that are built to do everything, almost everything remotely, except the 2 or 3 on-site grips and camera operators that you need. Everything goes backhauled back to their cloud production center, but then their director, their bug operator, the commentator even, are all remote. And there's a really good graphics that I can kind of share here. So this is kind of what their trucks are like. They're much more affordable than what you see with broadcast quality production trucks, OB trucks, that are much more expensive. And then they have this control center where all this IP streaming goes back into their backhaul. And the reason they use our product is because they have all these remote attendees. This is my favorite slide. This is our production facility. They're backhauling things, but then they've got their producer in a different state. They've got the director in another state. They've even done this with international members of the staff. They have a director that does a lot of their basketball games. It's based in the Bahamas. So that director, because he's not on premises or in the cloud control center, needs a live multi-viewer. And that's where they use the Dolby I/O product for live REMI. They can pull up that live multi-viewer, get a clean feed, and be able to direct the basketball production of that basketball game remotely. And the same with the bug operator. You can have someone doing the graphics that is controlling the actual graphics product in the venue, but they're remotely, right? Or at the cloud control center.
Yeah. And if any of you are crew members, like think about what this means for you too. What you get for a day rate normally for doing one game or one show, like you now have time to do 2. You don't have travel days anymore. So for those of us who do this either moonlighting like me, or for a full-time gig, like this allows you to just do more of it too.
Yeah, the amount of events they're able to support on a daily basis has just skyrocketed because so much better return on investment for the equipment they have. Also, a lot of these directors, like think of March Madness, right? The basketball tournament, they can now produce 2 or 3 games as a director a day without the travel need, where you lose 2-3 days in traveling, right? And being on premises. So there's an aging population inside of the broadcast industry. And this is feedback from BMG. And they're not finding enough young people to take over the job. So they need to be more efficient in the way they actually produce these live events. And then I've got a couple of videos here of different customers and what they've done with us. So this is a company called SetStream. They're based in Seattle, and they've enabled, this is a great example of all the money that goes into a live on-set production. This is scripted content. This is a commercial that's being shot. And think about the money that's being involved in getting this on site. They have created a tool with our product that you can pull these live, an offset video village, right? Or an offset monitor that people are virtually, remotely looking at the live footage that's being shot in real time to catch errors or catch issues with the production and reviewing this. And they can give feedback right away to the on-set production crew who maybe don't have the setup there to review content that's being shot in the same way, right? That someone can do remotely on their desktop. So SetStream has actually built and gone to market with their own product. They've developed on top of us. And then we also have another company called PackPost. So this is Pacific Post Productions. They're based in Hollywood as well. And they've built their own, I'll spare you guys this video is pretty terrible. But it does show how they've created a really simple product for people to use. So they can go through, they can do live reviews of kind of like what Dan just showed from Avid Media Composer or from Adobe Premiere. This component is also built on top of us. Dolby.io has a separate set of products around real-time communications. So you can build that real-time video just like we have here in Zoom, two-way communication, in addition to having the one-way streaming from Adobe Premiere or Avid inside of the product. So this whole remote review process is what we have a ton of customers in this space who have built these products.
Yeah, and I will also add that Pacific Post is into, well, I would say onset monitoring, but really near set or offset monitoring. And what they're looking at now is like, how do we do this without shipping a whole computer out? How do we send something very light and portable that we can still get the benefits and speed of WebRTC, but not have to ship something giant out? And so Osprey, if you know the capture card manufacturer, the encoder manufacturer, they have implemented WebRTC in their Talon product. So they have the Osprey Talon. It does 4K. It does kind of everything that you would need. And so what this customer is doing is now shipping those around the globe to do onset reviews to a remote team. And again, the benefit of us is you can protect your streams. You can have it in a browser. There's no specialty hardware or software or hardware decoder or like OpenVLC and plug this in. It's like, here's a link. It just works. So
yeah, and the key thing, the part where our technology comes in is the synchronous review of content, right? You need something live, remotely reviewed, whether that's a live event or a post-production review process. A lot of these companies, like the one I'm showing now, is actually called Fifth Kind. Fifth Kind just got acquired by SohoNet. They announced it at NAB just last month. But they have built the synchronous review product, the live review product on top of us. And then they also have this asynchronous review, which is you can upload assets and review, After Effects compositions that you've rendered or 3D assets that you've uploaded. So a lot of companies have gone and built this stuff on top of us.
Yeah.
Another quick thing we want to, we work a lot, like Dan mentioned, with partners to try to kind of simplify all these workflows. So we work with hardware encoder partners like Teradek, like Osprey, like Haivision, and so on. The other part that's really interesting is this company called Drastic Technologies. They make a product called Flowcaster. The reason we want to highlight this is Flowcaster is a great product for pulling in all these different sources. This could be hardware capture cards. So if you have an AJA capture device or a Bluefish capture or Matrox or Blackmagic, they're very affordable, SDI capture, HDMI capture from your sources. And you can pull that into the Flowcaster product and then send out WebRTC into our product, into Dolby.io. You can also use our plugins that work very nicely with all the NLE and color grading products we mentioned. That could be Adobe Premiere or Avid or so on. It's a parallel workflow to the ones we've showed, but that's another really, really great piece of software that you can run locally. And then they also make a product called NetXcode Server, which is a more programmatic way that you can pull in multiple sources. So this product could be really good for pulling in a ton of NDI sources on your local network and sending out WebRTC into our product for distribution across the world. So it was worth kind of mentioning this product because we work very closely with them. And it relates really nicely to both remote post as well as live remote production.
Yeah, and I think this is a good point to highlight. There is no like one workflow that fits everybody, right? Everybody, you got to kind of pick and choose your tools, and we're looking to be an enablement layer in that space, right? So we partner with many people to get video into us and transport it across. The question just came in from Julie. Does it work with Manycam? And I just pulled this up because I haven't heard of it before, but it looks like it's either a web-based mixer, maybe it's a download. But if they have RTMP out or SRT out, absolutely, you can just plug that directly into us. As far as streaming to more than one app, we don't send the stream on, so you kind of terminate with us and you view in the web browser. Doing a restream capability is something that we have in our roadmap, but we haven't implemented it yet. But for something like Manycam, you would take the Manycam, looks like you do the mix in Manycam, and then you would stream that to us, either probably RTMP or SRT, and then that would be played out in very short amount of time, so sub-second from Manycam to actually view.
I do remember I did chat to the CEO and the founder of Manycam last year. and we were working on an integration, but I don't think they've added the WIP component, which is a WebRTC contribution protocol. But like Dan just mentioned, you can use RTMP out of all these products. The one thing that's really important to note, though, as you use RTMP or SRT for that matter, is because we're enabling a browser, native browser playback with WebRTC, the browser does not support B-frames. So B-frames have to be removed from any encoder you use. Otherwise, you're going to get this really choppy playback inside of the web browser. So I'm going to spare you, if you do go and play with our product, I'm going to spare you.
You don't want to get into the details of GOPS and different frame types, Ryan?
No, I don't think we need to get into that. But if you used to live encoding workflows, obviously you have to put a keyframe in every so often. The way WebRTC works, it's a UDP based protocol, so it prioritizes speed over latency, or speed over anything else. So it just sends the information. It works slightly differently than traditional live streaming workflows, where you're adding in some buffer, right? And that's where the keyframe comes in. But ultimately, WebRTC can be used as a distribution protocol. So if our platform can support hundreds of thousands of concurrent viewers. So we have customers who are using us for that purpose, whether it's live auctions or whether it's live sport betting, or there's a ton of use cases here. We've focused today more on small synchronous reviews for live REMI and remote post, but you can use WebRTC for this. It just differentiates quite heavily from Apple HLS, which is the most popular distribution protocol. But as you guys well know, without HLS, you're getting 10, 20, 30, 60 seconds of delay in some cases. It's just a different use case, right? Depending if you need latency or not, and it's a concern for your workflows. So that, I know we've run just slightly over time. Hopefully we answered most of the questions as they came through. We really appreciate you guys joining us for this session, and it has been recorded, so we'll send it out. And feel free to reach out to both Dan or myself through our website. You're welcome to shoot us an email. And thanks for joining.
Thank you all.